Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Tuesday topic. Today's topic is getting to know Scopus, and our guests today are folks from Elsevier, Charity Elifritz, who is the senior customer consultant at Elsevier, and some other members of her team are here with us as well. We've got a few more folks that are still coming in, so while we're waiting for them, let me just throw it over to you, Charity, to get started and start welcoming folks. And don't be surprised if more people start joining the meeting as we get going.
Okay, so thanks everybody. I'm Charity Elifritz. I am with Elsevier and I'm a product expert in Scopus. So today we're going to go through a deck that's just meant to be a resource for you. We're not going to go through every single slide. I'm going to point out some of the highlights and then we're going to spend the bulk of our time in the tools today. Another thing is I kind of have a unique situation right now. I actually have two children that are in grad school right now looking for where they're going to go get their PhDs. And so I'm going to show you some examples of how we use Scopus to find, hey, who should they go work for in their fields of that they're interested in? What institutions are doing the kind of work that they're interested in? What funders are currently funding the kind of work that they're interested in? So I'm going to show you these kind of use cases because I think a lot of people do not think about those kinds of things. They think about, when I use Scopus, I'm just looking for documents. They don't realize that there's a lot of things and a lot of ways that we can use Scopus to help us answer other questions as well. I'm actually joined by Max and Damien. So we're a team here at Elsevier. Max is a customer consultant as well. Damien is a solutions account manager. And so all three of us can always answer all your questions that you're going to have moving forward. All right, so first of all, what is Scopus before we dive into it, right? So the way that I like to define Scopus is it's really like the card catalog of research. And what I mean by that is that when you go into a library and you're looking up a card catalog in the card catalog, which I know if you're not old enough, you may be looking at me like a deer in headlights right now, but you're going to look for a topic, or you're going to look for an author, or you're going to look for maybe a publisher, those kinds of things, right? And the card catalog does not care if you're a book or if you're a movie or if you're a journal. It doesn't care. It's still going to be in there. The card catalog doesn't care that you're not just Elsevier content, right? The card catalog is going to show you everything that's in the library. It's also going to show you all the authors, right? So Scopus is kind of like the same thing. What Scopus is doing is it's taking the world's research and it's kind of categorizing it. And this is a way for you to quickly find abstracts and citation information on the world's research. Make sense? Okay, an easy way to say that is Scopus is one of the world's largest abstract citation databases. But I know for me, I didn't know what that meant until I came and worked for Elsevier. I'd never heard that term before. But card catalog, I had absolutely heard of. All right, so a couple things I want to point out about this is because people who do know what Scopus is, sometimes they're a little misled about things. So first of all, it is not just physical sciences. We cover health sciences, social sciences, arts and humanities, life science, and so forth. It is not just journals. We have books, we have conferences, we even have a little bit of patent data in there as well. We have a huge amount of open access content, and it's very, very large. It's over 94.4 million records within Scopus. And actually, I'll show you what the exact number is today and how you find that. But it is not just Elsevier content, okay? Even though Elsevier is known as a publisher, Scopus actually covers over 7,000 publishers, all right? Now, why does that matter? Well, it matters for when we start using the filters, right? It's not that helpful if we're only looking at Elsevier content. And it's not just content from the United States. We cover over 105 countries, so it's worldwide. Make sense? Okay. All right, now there is something that's going on in the background that I do like to point out to people. So I want you to think in your head about Social Security numbers, okay? This is the easiest way to think about it. So every document in Scopus has a number attached to it. It's called an EID. That stands for Elsevier ID number. Every author indexed in Scopus has a number attached to them. It's called an author ID. And every affiliation, an affiliation is just a fancy way of saying institution, that also has a number. It's called an affiliation ID. Now, that's great and dandy, right? So think of it like a social security number. But what we do is, because we're using numbers instead of names, we get rid of a lot of issues that you find in other abstract citation databases. So what it does is it helps dedupe. You get rid of some of those duplicates. Another thing that it does is it tells who's doing what with higher confidence, because you get rid of some of those name disambiguation situations when you use a number. On top of that, what we do is our algorithm ties every document to a person and to a place. It ties every person to documents and places to documents and people, okay? And so forth around that circle. The reason that you care about this is because it's about the filters. So if I go into Google Scholar and I do a search, I'm going to find documents. I'll find lots of documents. But the problem that I always run into is when I start drilling down into those documents, I start realizing, like, why did this document come up for my search? Hey, I hit this filter, but why am I still getting this? Oh, hey, this is a duplicate document. So it's not as clean. So when you do something like this in the background with coding, you make the data a lot cleaner. Now, is Scopus 100%? Absolutely not. You're never going to find any database in the world that's 100%. And I don't want you to ever think that. And if anyone ever makes you believe that, just know that they're full of it. So what we do pride ourselves on, though, is that our author IDs and the cleanliness of you never having to touch it, it runs about 97% accuracy. That is gigantic number, okay? So we do know that no one knows your research better than you, though. So we do have feedback loops that you can correct things. But we just want you to know that Scopus, the reason I would use this over something like PubMed or something like Google Scholar is because the data has been cleaned up, it's been validated, and we've actually added additional content. All right, so I just said something about adding additional content. Well, Charity, what does that mean? Well, I also said that we cover over 7,000 publishers, right? That's a whole lot of metadata. So the way that it works is we get all the metadata from all of these publishers. Then what we do is we translate that metadata and we put it in a standardized format. Why do you care? Charity, this doesn't matter to me. You care because if it's not in a standardized format, the filters don't work as well. And I keep harping on these filters because I'm going to show you why that's so important for you here in a few minutes. Then at that point, what we do is we add additional content to all that metadata, because other publishers are not going to use things like Elsevier ID numbers, affiliation IDs. That's an Elsevier thing. So we're going to add that content. We're also going to tag it with things like mesh terms, Embase terms, things like that. At that point, then it becomes available on Scopus. The other reason I'm telling you this is that if you publish in a journal, and then the next day, like let's say the publication date was Monday of this week, okay? The journal published it, said, hey, this is the date it's released. You're not going to see it in Scopus that same day. What's going to happen is that publisher is going to send us their metadata. Typically that happens with the big publishers about every 2 to 4 weeks that we're getting their data. Then it takes about 5 to 10 days for us to do this process. So typically what you'll see with the big publishers is you're going to see it indexed within Scopus within about a month of it actually being released at the journal. For some of the smaller publishers, sometimes that can be a few months. If you ever run into a major problem where you're like, Charity, I had a paper that came out in January and now it's November and I still don't see it, there might be an issue there. You just reach out to us and we'll look into that. But a lot of times it's that the publisher maybe mistakenly didn't send us the metadata or something like that. All right, so let's talk about why you would use Scopus over some other tools. Well, Scopus is designed specifically to support some of these searches and filtering so that you get not only papers that you care about, but papers that are relevant. There's been like a QA process to make sure that you're not getting junk. For example, you're not going to get papers from like a tabloid, for example. You're not going to see those kinds of things in Scopus. Whereas some other things that do web scraping, you might actually get junk like that. I always use the alien one because someone pointed that out to me a long time ago. They found something that was actually from a tabloid in Google Scholar, and I thought that was hilarious. It's been years, but it was a great example. We also have very, very broad coverage. So that's another reason why you would want to use Scopus. All right. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I just want to show you that it's here. In Scopus, you can search 3 different ways. You can search for a document, you can search for an author, you can search for an institution. And even though I just said you can search for 3 ways, we kind of have a 4th way. You can do advanced searching as well. I am actually a chemist. I'm not a librarian. I'm not an IT person. So I need searching for dummies. I'm going to show you how that works. We make searching in Scopus extremely easy. There are a couple things, though, that I feel like people don't think about, especially students, PhD students, early career faculty, and I feel like they miss out. And this is not just for Elsevier products. I was a chemist in a manufacturing plant. We use something called SAP. And these little tricks actually work in programs like that as well. So I always think it's really important for us to always teach our students about these things so that they can do better just in life in general in their careers. So the first way is the quotation marks. So if you do a search in Google, if you do a search in Scopus, if you do a search in like SAP, any of these other kind of programs, when you do something like artificial intelligence, what you're actually telling the search is, I want you to find the word artificial and I want you to find the word intelligence. Doesn't matter what order they are in, and they don't have to be next to each other. You're just trying to find those 2 words. Well, that's not very helpful, right? If I'm trying to do searches for AI. So if you put quotation marks around something like that, now what you're saying is, I want you to find the words artificial and intelligence, but now they have to be next to each other and in that order. Okay. Now, some people will say, they will explain it as, I want you to find the exact term. That's not exactly right, because there's some word stemming that happens with quotation marks. So that's why I like using quotation marks, because it'll actually automatically pick up plurals and things like that. The other trick that I really like is the star here. So I do a lot of searches on cardio, like heart research. So when I do a search, I'll do cardio star. And what that does is it picks up anything that's like cardiomyopathy, cardiovascular, cardiothoracic. So that star just says anything can be after this letter. Make sense? Okay. All right, and guys, feel free, interrupt me, take yourselves off mute. I'm not so scripted. We can go down a rabbit hole. It's totally fine if you have any questions. All right, this is just something I like to give you. It just talks a little bit about what Scopus does automatically. So I don't have accented characters on my keyboard, not a big deal. It's going to pick up things like that. It's going to pick up stop words. It's going to pick up plurals and things of that nature. Just automatically happens. We're going to talk about this when we're in the tool, but advanced searching is something that is available to you, and we'll talk about field codes. I think that when someone tries to describe it to you without showing it to you, I think it gets a little confusing. So I'm going to show you this when we're in the tool itself. We do have sorting. So once you get the documents that you want, you can sort. I like pointing this out because I already told you that I'm a chemist. I was actually a stable isotope chemist. What we did was very, very slow moving. Everybody already knows who everybody is in the world that does stable isotope, because it's such a niche field. Technology just doesn't move that fast. So what I like to do when I'm doing that kind of research is I sort on citation count. But if I were doing research in COVID, for example, we saw that technology going so fast. Or let's say that I'm in computer science and that technology is moving really, really fast. I might not want to sort on citation count. In that situation, I might want to sort by date of publication. So it kind of depends on what I'm trying to accomplish and the field that I'm in as to what I would want to sort on. This is just a screenshot of all the filters. We're going to go through this in the tool itself, but I just wanted you to have this as a reference. All right, so once again, we're going to go into this live and we're going to do this, but I want to take your eyes to a couple things on the screen. When you do a search for your area of research, especially if you're a student, maybe you're a PhD writing your thesis, maybe you are actually thinking about looking for what is the next step. I want to find other people who are doing this research so that I may be reaching out to them to find a postdoc position. Or maybe I want to see what institutions are doing this kind of work because I want to be tracking them for faculty openings, things like that. When you do your search, you have a saved search here and you can set an alert. This is so you don't have to keep coming into Scopus and reinventing the wheel, right? You've done your search, you want to just let it set. You then want to just get an alert for every time something new that meets that search criteria. And what that will do is it will send you an email. So you don't even have to log into Scopus to see that alert. You'll get an email and the email will give you links to the new documents that meet your search criteria. Down on the left side is all your filters. This is where your sort is. So like I said, the two biggest sort ones that I use is date and citation count. There are some other options, but to be fair, these are your typical ones that you'll use. We also have an analyze results, and I'm going to show you what that looks like here in just a few minutes. But what I really want to point out here is that Scopus is like Amazon. You've all shopped on Amazon, right? It's the same kind of concept. So instead of searching for a product, I'm searching for documents. And the page is laid out the same way. So my filters are all down the left side. My document list is all here. And then I scroll down and I can just choose things that I'm interested in. So this is what an affiliation search looks like. Honestly, I doubt that anyone here will really need this. Typically, it's the library who will want to use this. But the thing here that I like to do is if I were to look up Drexel University, I took this screenshot a while ago, so these numbers aren't going to be accurate as of today. Didn't want anyone to get confused. But I like these documents per whole institution, and I'll show you what that looks like. That actually grabs a bunch of name variants. Maybe you have, I'll show you what the hierarchy and things look like so it makes sense. But this might be the only thing that you would use on this screen. Now, an author search is something that a lot of you might do. So the author page, I like to kind of describe it as something like ResearchGate. If you've all used ResearchGate before, this is very similar kind of concept. The only difference is with ResearchGate, you have to load your documents. With Scopus, what happens is this is automatically done. You do not ever have to touch this page if you don't want to. This is done via algorithm. An author details page is created once you have 2 documents indexed within Scopus. And so then the algorithm says, hey, you're a real person. So then what happens is no matter where you go, like as you go to different institutions, it'll still capture all of your documents that are indexed in Scopus under one profile. Now, there are things that you can help to make sure that it always captures all your documents. And that's things like adding your ORC ID. You can do that. There's also things that you can do here with the edit profile. Let's say that you know that there's some documents within Scopus, but they're missing in your profile. Here's where you could do that. Or let's say that you see some documents that don't belong to you. You can also edit it here. But what a lot of people like to do is they like to see their H index. They also like to see how they're doing with their documents and citations over time. And then here you have a lot of things too. So one of the things that a lot of people will do is these 300. So for this person, they have 366 documents. You can export this and put this on your lab page. So you don't have to type out all the documents that you've ever done. You can export them for a CV, things like that. And they're already formatted for you, ready to go. We also do list some of the awards that they might have. I want to be very transparent about this. This is not a tool that is meant to find an individual person or an individual institution all of their funding. It's not what this does. We're following most of the national funders, and then we're trying to do some state funders right now. We do have some foundations and things like that, but what we're doing is we're kind of giving you a taste. We're saying, hey, this is an example of some of the funding that this person has received to help you better understand what they're doing. All right, but I just want to be clear. This is not something you can go into and say, oh, I want to find this person. I want to find all the funding that they've received. That's not what this is. Okay. You can also see they're cited by, and you can set citation alerts too. So let's say you want to look yourself up. You want to see every time you get a new citation, you can set an alert just like you would set an alert for documents. All right. So let's go back to the documents themselves, right? So I was doing that Amazon shopping, right? But I'm Amazon shopping for a article instead of a product, right? So now I find a title that looks like, hey, this looks like something I'm interested in. You click on it and this is what you're going to see. The things that I think are really awesome is that I can click on the people, and what that'll do is if I click on a person, it'll take me right to their author details page. Another thing that I can do is as I scroll down the page, I can view metrics for that document. And the metrics that we use for documents is called Plum metrics. It's basically alt metrics on steroids. So I'll show you what that looks like in the tool itself. It'll make more sense. But one thing here that is very cool about Scopus that not a whole lot of products do is that I can get a 360-degree view of this paper. So if I scroll down on this screen, I can see all the references. So all the research that went into this paper, I can see those. Then on the right side of the screen, I can see the cited by. So now I can see all the research that came out of this document, right? So you get how this 360-degree loop works. But we actually go a step further. One of the things that we do as researchers, and just remember this as you're going through your PhD, as you're going through grad school, as you're early in your career, one of the worst things that we do to ourselves is that we're not speaking the same language as our peers. And what I mean by that is maybe we're just not using the right buzzwords. What's really cool about this is that Scopus runs an algorithm that says, hey, these papers were not a reference and they were not a cited document. However, they are closely enough related that we think that these might be of interest. And even though when you do a search in Scopus, we're not running like synonyms or anything like that. It's really based on what words you choose to do your searches. This really opens up that search if you're not using the right buzzwords to do your search. And I'll show you another strategy too around that, but this is really cool stuff. And then below that, if there are any data sets that are associated with this research, you can also see the data sets. And this is just talking about Plum metrics. Plum metrics captures usage, captures mentions, social media, and citations. This is what it looks like. I think this is really great for people that are in social sciences and in arts and humanities. Right now, the way that we use metrics for authors is based on that H index. And the way that an H index is calculated, it is always going to go up as you publish more. So it's never fair to compare somebody that's in physics to somebody that is maybe in government or art or something like that. They just don't they don't have the same kind of publication rate. It's just the nature of the field. So what you can do is, or if you're early career, right? You just haven't published that many times, but you've gotten like 3,000 citations on one of your papers. It's been tweeted a bunch of times. It's been mentioned in a couple news articles, things like that. What I tell those kind of people is don't focus on your H index in that case, because it's never going to capture that kind of engagement of your document. It's not going to capture the impact that you're actually making. So what I do is I say for students and things like that, I say, hey, point out your Plum metrics instead. Because if you have a document that is done amazingly, you can go to Plum metrics and you highlight yourself, right? If you had just given your H index, you would probably be like, oh, you have an H index of 1. That means nothing, right? So this is just another way to highlight yourself. Make sense? All right, and then also we have journal metrics. I don't think anyone on this call is going to care about this, but I will show you in the tool, and you have this resource. All right. Just so you guys know, we do actually have a Scopus certification program if anyone's interested in that. And then we also have Scopus Academy for researchers and students. This is a 6-week cohort. You can do it at your own pace within those 6 weeks, but it does have to be done within those 6 weeks. You do get a certification at the very end. This Scopus Academy is really like, I could just go in and let's say I just want to learn about author profiles and I don't care about anything else. Or I want to look at site score metrics. I don't care about anything else. This is meant for you to go in, look at some tutorials for what you care about. There is no certificate at the end, but you can do it whenever you want and you don't have to do all of it. All right, let's go into Scopus. All right, everybody see my screen still? Let's make this a little bigger. Okay. All right, so this is what your home screen is going to look like. This is just when you're on campus, you're just going to go to scopus.com. If you are remote, what I always tell people is log in however you would remote access into your institution. I believe this is through VPN right now if you're remote. I know you guys are moving into single sign-on. Doesn't matter. You're just going to get into your institution. Now, once you're logged into your institution, the best way to do this is go to your library page and go to your library databases. Then from library databases, you're going to click on Scopus. The reason that I have you go this route is because I can't tell you how many times I've had people call me and say, I've put in my username and password. I've reset my password 3 times. I still can't get in, things like that. And then come to find out they're not on campus. And when you're not on campus, you're not within the IP range. IP range is what gives you access. Your username and password is what gives you what we call customization. And what that means is like when you save a search or you set an alert, it needs a profile to tag those things to. You don't have access to that kind of functionality if you're not logged in. But your username and password doesn't technically give you access. It's the IP range. So that's why you want to make sure that you're logged into your institution. Now, if you're already on campus, you're already within the IP range, and that's why your username and password, that's all you have to do. Okay. If you run into any problems, just let us know and we can walk you through it. We can do a screen share and everything will be fine. Your username and password for Scopus is your same username and password for Science Direct. It's the same for Funding Institutional and SciVal, which you also have access to at Drexel. Yes, and even if you use the VPN, so you're logged into your VPN, but your username and password for your Elsevier products is not necessarily your username and password for logging into your VPN. Those are separate. So it's almost like you have to log in twice. You're logging into your institution with your institution credentials, and then you have to log into Elsevier. Does that make sense, Dana? Okay, great. All right, so here is how we do the different searches: documents, authors, organizations. We have a new researcher discovery tool. I haven't really played with it yet. I'll let Max talk. Maybe Max, have you played with it yet?
A little bit. Yeah, it's very similar to when you are doing a document search for keywords and then you use there's a function, it's called the analyze search results function, which kind of shows you who are the top researchers who have published in with those keywords. It's very similar to that, only it's just the interface is different, but the intention of it being kind of what Charity was hinting at before, where you have a topic that you're really interested in. Maybe you're looking for grad school advisors or collaborators on a project. It allows you to kind of see who are the top researchers in that field based both on number of citations. And I think it also allows you to see it by the H index for that specific topic. So it actually can be very useful. And it's a fairly new feature that we've added in the past year or two, I want to say.
All right, so for documents, remember how I said I'm a chemist, I need searching for dummies? I'm going to just do pregnancy and opioids. So I'm putting in my word, I'm doing the star because I want to find pregnant, pregnancies, things like that. I'm going to do add search field. This is where I get what's called Boolean terms, and, or, and not. For me, I like to just stay on the default. I like to use my filters to get a little bit more in the weeds, but if you wanted to, you could actually start your document search with all of these other things. So let's say that you had an ISSN number, an ORCID number, or if you wanted to do an affiliation search or an author search, you could do it here. I don't like to do it here, and I'll show you why. I think it's easier. So when I start this search, I just like to use keywords. It's just my preference, but you have this option for you. Then what I'm going to do is my opioid. Now remember, it's going to capture plurals and things like that. And I'm just going to do my search. And then remember what I said, it's like Amazon. This whole page is like Amazon. I promise yours will go faster. Whenever I share my screen, mine goes a lot slower. So here's like the list of my results. On the left side, here's my filters. If you're like me and you're doing 1,000 things at once, up here, we will always tell you what your search is on. Okay, and I'll show you why this is important here in just a second. Here's that save search and set an alert. Here is your sort. So let's say I want to sort by cited by. Okay, so you can see that I have 6,557 documents. I'm not going to read 6,507 documents, and I'm definitely not going to read 6,000 even abstracts. Okay, so what I do a lot of times is I say, okay, I don't care what happened in the 80s. Like in this case, let's say that if I'm writing my dissertation, I might want to look back at some older documents depending on what I'm doing. But let's say that I am actually thinking about going to find a postdoc position. Or let's say that I want to find funding in this area. It's just a preference. I like to look at no more than 10 years. Typically 5 years, I think, is a little bit better. So let's do 2018 to 2023, or we can even do 2024. We can see the newest stuff. So now my list is down already a little bit down to 2,500. Once again, still probably not going to read 2,500 documents. So I'm going to go through my filters and see what makes sense for me for whatever it is that I'm doing. So some people like to look at just open access. Let's say that you are doing your dissertation even on a very niche field, or you're in a very niche field, and that's where you want to take your career. A lot of times when we're in very niche kind of things, having the library having access to those journals might not be great. And sometimes it's extremely annoying that everything I click on, I can't get to the full text. That happens sometimes. So what you can do to ensure that you can get to all the full text is you could say, okay, I only want to look at open access. That is a strategy that you can use. The other thing that I'm going to do is, do you see here how these are in order with the numbers, right? So I can actually do some analysis here. I can see that this H.E. Jones is the most prolific in this search string. So these are people that I might want to look into. Either I might want to work with them, I might want to collaborate with them, I might want to check and see what exactly they're doing and see how much funding they have, things like that. These are kind of the decisions that I make here. I can also see the subject area. Now, subject area is not a department, all right? I want to be very clear about that. But sometimes if I'm doing a search on, let's use the example of artificial intelligence again, there's just so much out there on AI that you will probably never be able to read it all. So I like using the subject area as a secondary filter. Another example is you're writing your dissertation and you keep finding, let's say you're doing it on AI, but you keep finding AI documents that are not really affiliated with or related to what you're actually doing. So here's my example. I'm doing AI, but I really want to look at AI from a medical standpoint. So what I might do is do my search on AI, then come down here, and as a secondary filter, use medicine to help kind of get me more to what I'm actually looking for. I don't ever start with this. The reason I say that is because the subject area is actually tagged to the journal, not to the article itself. So if I am a physicist and for whatever reason I got published in Nature, well, Nature doesn't have a physics tag. It has like a life science, chemistry, biochemistry, biology tags, but it doesn't have a physics tag. So that if I were to have limited myself to, let's say, physics, I would not find that document. So it helps you get down to a more manageable number, like I said, but I don't use it as my first go-to filter. Here's publication stage. A lot of people will like to just look at final. Article and press means that it's coming. It just hasn't been fully released yet. Oh, you'll see that this number is pretty low. We just started this in the last couple years. We're still capturing things, so it's still growing. I do have people who will use this filter a lot. They will say, okay, I only want to look at articles or I only want to look at reviews. Some of my computer science people, like I said, the technology moves really fast. So what they will do is they'll start with, I only want to look at conference papers. Some of my arts and humanities people, they only want to look at books. So it just kind of depends on what you're going to do. Now, one of the things I always want to point out to my students that are trying, that in their career, they're going to try to get published, right? One of the hardest things that we do is figuring out where do we put our efforts and where to publish. Even faculty have this problem sometimes. So what I like to do is I like to do a search on the exact kind of research that I'm doing. Try to get pretty specific, but don't, if you're only getting like 3 documents, don't be that specific, right? Try to get yourself where you have like 1,000 or more documents for the search, but still is kind of, more specific to what you're doing. What I do then is I come down here and I say, okay, this is where my peers are publishing. So here's Obstetrics and Gynecology, Journal of Addiction Medicine, Drug and Alcohol Dependence. And do you see how they're in order? So I'm gonna copy this. Whoops, I don't want to limit to it. I'm going to copy this and we're going to come back to that in a second. But I'm definitely going to look into at least the top 5. And I'm going to ask myself, am I publishing there? Why or why not? Because this is where my peers are publishing. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and look at keyword. Remember how I said how we shoot ourselves in the foot is we're not speaking the same language as our peers? I like to take a look at this and see, oh, you know what? I didn't think about this. But yes, I'm doing research in pregnancy and opioids, but I don't care about like mice research, right? I only want to look at humans. So I could, filter on this. I didn't think about using the word opiate instead of opioid, things like that. You can click here. This works just fine. It's just a preference. I actually, when I think of something else to add to my search string, I add it up here into my refined search. It's just a preference. Either way works. It's fine. Here's your affiliations. So this is great for graduate students, PhD students looking to go do a postdoctorate, things like that. Here I can see what are the institutions that are doing this kind of work. And then I may say, oh, okay, I want to filter on NC Chapel Hill, and then maybe I want to go back and look and then see who the authors are. So I can do things like that as well. Now, keep in mind that authors will always have co-authors as well. So just because I'm looking at documents by an affiliation doesn't mean that authors from that affiliation. But you would think most of the time, your top couple ones will be from that institution. It just works out that way. I'm not saying it will always, but just keep in mind. Here is the funding sponsor. So this is what Darren and I were talking about earlier. I think that this is not a used enough resource. So a lot of people don't think about using Scopus to find funding. What I do here is I say, okay, I'm going to look at the last 5 or so years because I don't care who was funding my work back in the 80s, all right? They may not be a funder today. So you do want to limit on years. You want to limit to your specific area of research. Then what we're going to do is, do you see how they're in order? We are not saying that NIH gives the most amount of money. They probably do, but that's not what this is saying. What we're saying is they're mentioned in the most amount of documents. Now, Doing this exercise today works really well. If you wanted to look at funding trends from the 80s, though, it's not going to work as well. And the reason I say that is because it's only been about the last 10 years that funders have really created mandates. We're talking about even the small foundations and things saying you have to mention us as one of your funders when you publish. The reason that that started was more around conflicts of interest, but doesn't matter, helps us, right? So I've done a search on my specific area of research. I've done a search in the last 5 years. So now what I'm going to do is say, okay, do I know these funders? Yes or no? Am I applying for funding from them? Yes or no? I want to ask myself that. Then what I want to do is you guys actually have access to a tool called Funding Institutional. And the way that you're going to get to it is you're just going to do fundinginstitutional.com. And all of Drexel has access to this. And then what you can do, sorry, I thought I had this signed in, is you're going to take the name, you're going to take the name of the funder. So in this case, let's use this one. We'll just use that one. And you can come in here and you can look at funders. You can type it in there. There it is. And then you can see current funding opportunities for this funder. So here I'm going to go in here. This is the funder. They have 246 current opportunities. And we do trainings on funding institutional as well. So I'm not going to get too in the weeds with this tool. But then what you can do is you can do keywords here, just like in Scopus as well. But now I'm looking at a funder that I know already funds my type of research. And so you can find current funding opportunities by pairing Scopus with funding institutional. Now, I have people all the time that, I don't have this problem in the physical sciences, but I had someone who was in arts and humanities once. Pretty sure they got sent to my training as punishment. But I was talking to them. I said, hey, why don't you tell me what kind of work you do? And he said, oh, well, I'm in unfunded research. And it took everything I had not to crack up laughing. I was like, well, you get a paycheck, right? So you are in funded research. And he was like, no. He's like, they don't, no one funds what I do. Well, sure enough, I said, just humor me, give me some keywords. And we did find about 5 opportunities for him. And since then, we have added this functionality to Scopus. And so I have found, I like to kind of check in on that use case sometimes. What they were doing was the history of Spanish influenza. And believe it or not, there is still funding around that. So quite interesting. This is just another way to find current funding opportunities. And then as I scroll down, I have country and territory, source type. Source type is really like the same up here as the document type. This is just at the document level. Most of my people actually use the filters at the document level, but this is available to you. And then language. All right. Now, I have found a document that I want. I'm just going to go into it. That's a review. Let's see if we can find an article. So you see here how it says open access. So this is the document I want. And just like I was telling you before, we kind of give that 360-degree view. So here I can click on the authors if I want. Here's my metrics. And these are my plum metrics for the document. Here is the abstract. So I'm just scrolling down. So this is like the front page. I'm just scrolling down the page. So metrics, abstract. If there is any chemical structures or anything that are related, you'll see them right here. Here's those index keywords, mesh term, inventory terms. If you are interested in sustainable development goals, that's another use case. I'm going to scroll down. Here's my funding details. And then here's my references. So I could click all of these references, or I could click ones of interest. I can export these out. I don't know, Darren, do you know what you guys use? Do you use like EndNote? Do you use RefWorks? Do you use Mendeley? What do you use as your reference manager?
I'm not really sure. Yoko, do you want to speak about what you advise your students to use?
Yes, EndNote.
Okay, so what you can do right here is you're going to click on this RIS format, and then you can actually export these into EndNote and do your reference manager. We try to make it very easy for you. Another thing that you can do is up here. So those are your references, right? Here's your cited documents. So if I want to set a citation alert, or I can view all the citing documents, I can do that. Here's those related documents I was talking about. So these are documents that were not a reference and were not a citation, but we thought the algorithm said, hey, these are pretty closely related. And like I said before, this is really nice because maybe you just didn't use the right keywords, right? It's really kind of opens up kind of the general layout of documents that you can find. Now, if I want to see the full text, here I've got full text options. Yours will look a little bit different than mine. So I'm not within your IP range. So when you go to view options, you will see if the Drexel library has access to that full document. Another place that you can do that is out here in the search results. Once again, yours will look a little bit different. Generally, it's right here. Is where you can see if Drexel has access to that full document. All right. Now I can also, remember those on the references that I was talking about? I could also do this out here and export to EndNote, anything that I want right here. Oh, sorry, that was Zotera. Do EndNote right here. Okay. So we try to make that really easy for students to be able to do something like that. All right. Now, we kind of already did some analysis with just looking at the filters, right? I already saw who the key players were. I already saw who the key institutions were. I already saw who the key funders were. But I can also click on all and analyze search results. And this is going to give me the graphical view of what we already saw in the filters. Now keep in mind, 2024 is not even close to being done. I can see how this is tracking. I can see documents by author, documents by affiliation. So I can see who's doing the bulk of this work. I can see documents by type. And then documents by the funding sponsors. And I can see where people are publishing and how that's trending. Now, let's go to the people. So I want to see the people that are doing this work, right? Because I'm thinking about going to get my PhD. And so I want to look up these people and see where they are, what they're doing, see if this is someone that I might be interested in reaching out to. This also might be that I'm a faculty member and this person, I want to see exactly what they're doing because it might be a collaboration reason that I want to go see them. So I click on their name and here now I can see them. See this view more? I can see where they've been publishing from. So they're at Johns Hopkins. And it looks like they're still publishing from North Carolina at Chapel Hill. They may have a dual affiliation or they may have moved there. It just kind of depends. It looks like they probably have a dual affiliation is what I'm thinking. As I scroll down, I can see their documents. So I can read their titles, see if this is someone that I'm interested in working with. I can see maybe some example of some of awards that they've won. Is this something that I want to look into? So what's funny is my daughter has already done this exercise because she is looking at different PhD programs. And we use Scopus to find, what researchers around the United States are doing CRISPR work, because that's what she wants to go and do. She wants to go into CRISPR research, but she doesn't want to go into CRISPR with agriculture. She wants to go into CRISPR with medicine. So that's how we use that subject, right? And then we looked at the people And we came through here and then we looked at some of their awarded grants. So she has already reached out to these people, to some of these professors and said, hey, I'm interested in coming to your institution to get my PhD. I noticed that you got funding in X, Y, and Z. I was interested if you could tell me a little bit more about it. And every single researcher that she has reached out to and said, hey, not only did I look up your research, I looked up your funding. They have all not only emailed her, but called her and were very eager to talk to her. And they were just very surprised, like that someone took the effort to do that. And so I know that in their minds, that kind of puts her at the top of their students that they might be interested in. She's also trying to get a fellowship. So she looked at funding in this area. And so in some of those conversations, she also said, hey, did you know that this is a big funder in this area? Because she had that information. So these are ways that as students and PhD students, you can utilize Scopus to help you with those conversations moving your career forward. So it's not just a tool of, hey, I want to find some documents so that I can do my thesis. I want to find some documents to see what other people are doing in my research. You can actually take this kind of information and make it actionable. Does that make sense? All right. So if I want to go back to search, I just go right here. Now, remember, we talked about publishing, right? I already told you, like, hey, you're going to do this search in the last couple of years and where are all my peers publishing? That is one way. That's one strategy that I want to look at. Where should I be publishing? But the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go to sources. So I was in search. Now I'm going to go to sources. And remember how I said I'm going to do this with my top 5 of where my peers are publishing? Up here, I'm going to go to title. And I'm going to go to that journal. And now I'm going to find some metrics around the journal itself. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at something called site score. Now, site score is really the same thing as impact factor that you hear from Web of Science. It's all the same stuff. And at the end of the day, the equation, I think, is like a year or 2 off. I think site score covers an extra year. I can't remember exactly what the difference is. But at the end of the day, the number doesn't mean anything. I want to clarify that. I have a lot of people that will be like, oh, I'm in a journal of site score impact factor of X. My first answer is, okay, great. What I really want to know is your rank and trend. Okay, so I'm looking at this journal with a site score of 5.7, but the reason that we calculated that score was to compare it to other similar journals. We also calculate that score every year to see how it's trending. So this particular journal, remember, it was number 2 where my peers were publishing. So I absolutely want to publish there because I want to help myself for getting more citations. But I also want to make sure that the journal is legit. So it is trending upward. Now, at the end of the day, I have to make my bosses happy. We all report to somebody. And so if I come down here and I see the 137th, it's only in the 74th percentile. Okay. So in order to help myself from a promotion and tenure, from an aspect of better odds of getting funding, I really want to be in higher rated journals. So what I do here is, yes, I want to publish here because it's number 2 of my peers. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way up and I'm going to say, okay, do any of these journals make sense? Does it make sense for me to publish here, here, here? Why or why not? All right. And that's how you kind of want to strategize about where to publish. It's 2 different ways of looking at it. You do want to look at top tier journals, but you also want to look at where my peers are publishing. Now, sometimes where your peers are publishing is the number 1 journal in its classification. And in situations like that, if you're early career, if you're working on your postdoc, you're probably not going to get in the number 1 journal, and that's okay. But you might get number 5, you might get number 10. So this is how you kind of look at it this way, right? There's a way that you can still be in top tier journals, but you're helping your odds. Does this make sense? So Any questions on how we decide where to go get funding, how we decide where to publish, how do we decide who to work with?
I'm not a student, but I'm attending. I do really like the fact that this system allows us to immediately see, also be able to go look at the funding and then drill down on that. It allows a few extra things. I will say a lot of what you show is also possible in other databases, of course, but that is an item that, and also the looking up by institution, publications by institution and sub area. I know that we have used that in our college to present at our research faculty meetings, what our profile kind of looks like in terms of publications. So that is really, really nice. I did put in the chat, and I just want to make sure, since we have I know at least one postdoc on the call, but also for students, just to put your comment in context of the site score or the impact factor. I mean, I totally agree with you that you have to look at the whole picture, the ranking and so on. But unfortunately, we do live still in an academic world where impact factor is extremely important, or site score. And I know in our college, faculty are asked to add their impact factor next to their publications on their CV, and committees definitely look at that. So
what are they comparing it to, though? So that's the thing that always makes me laugh, is like the number itself.
No, we typically ask for the number and then the ranking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the ranking is really what's important.
Yeah.
It's not the number itself. Yeah.
Indeed.
And I was just showing you guys too on the screen that this is same way that you search for a document and author, you can do an organization as well. And you just start typing the organization. Here it is. One thing that I will show you, I don't know how many people would use this that's on the call today, but I like to go to documents per whole institution. And there now I'm capturing, it's what we call a parent listing and all of its child's listings that roll up to it. So this is capturing legitimately all of Drexel. And then we can see their documents by year, how much has been open access, who your, main authors are, subjects, and so forth. You just kind of use the filters the same way. And you found that to be very useful, you said, for different meetings?
Well, I know, is Roseanne still on the call, or Darren, you want to?
No, Roseanne had to hop off.
Did you do that search for us, Darren? Are you doing that each time for our research active faculty, or is that Zach?
Zach is doing it for the research active faculty, but we're using the same general techniques as we did for tracking the PhDs and postdocs through SciVal.
Yeah, so at the research, we have once a quarter meetings with all the research active faculty, and then typically we get a few slides presented where we see, just for our college, in what areas do we have the most publications, who are our top publishers, and it's just nice to see where, and then to also see where you are in comparison to your peers within just your own college. I mean, I know I can go look that up myself, but it's so nice to see it just projected, and there it is. So yeah, it's a nice picture in the moment of the college.
Okay.
Great. Well, we're at our time. I want to respect everybody's time and thank Charity and the rest of her team from Elsevier for joining us today. Any last minute questions before we go? No, seeing none. Thank you so much. This was excellent.
Thank you. No problem.
All right.
Get
See you
some
next
good
time.
day.
So much.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. It's nice to meet you all.